There's a cloud up in the sky, drifting with the wind, just floating on by. Clouds full of raindrops, ready to fall, bringing water, clean, clean water down to us all. And that is why when I see a cloud, I say thank you, clouds, thank you, clouds. You give us rain to help the flowers grow. Thank you, clouds. You grow the lakes and make the rivers flow. Thank you, clouds.
Thank you for the raindrops from above, giving us the water we drink and a world of nature to love.
Say thank you, clouds. Thank you, clouds. Thank you, clouds. Thank you for the ponds and the streams now. For the earth growing green now. Thank you, clouds. Thank you, clouds.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the first installment of what is going to be a 32-part video series where we dive into every single team in the Better League heading into the Madden 21 cycle. I am, as always, your host, Connor Rice, and we begin with the Arizona Cardinals. Just to give sort of like a brief overview of what I plan on covering in every single one of these video installments is I'm going to talk about every single unit, their strengths, their weaknesses, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, the three levels of the defense, etc. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about key contract situations. We're going to talk about cap space. We're going to give a complete game-by-game prediction for the first season of the Madden 21 cycle, and then we're going to end with something I'm actually going to save exactly what it is until later. It's something that I've trademarked, something that the humble host has trademarked, but thank you all for joining me on this first team preview heading into the Madden 21 cycle. One thing that excites me about this video series that I'm about to do heading into, again, Madden 21 is, like, ever since the very first podcast that I ever did with Morty, the one that went like 3.5 hours long, where we, went super deep into every team, which like wasn't necessarily a good thing because neither of us were necessarily prepared for it. But ever since then, all of my podcasts and articles, etc., have taken a very macro, sometimes you can hear me misspeak. The humble host does not change in that regard. Also, I'm referring to myself in the third person now, like, okay. Lock in, Connor. But yeah, ever since that podcast, I've taken a very macro view of the league with all my podcasts. I've talked about individual performances. I've talked about, Super Bowl contenders, etc., with my power rankings. But I've never gone this deep into, like, specific teams before. And I've never, like, I've especially never done this as, like, a preview section. I've only really talked about team fit as, like, an off-season thing, or I should say, like, a post-season thing, excuse me. But I've never done this heading into the cycle, and I'm really excited to get started. I'm sure this will get better and better. I'm sure it'll get cleaner and cleaner as I go on. I'm sure this will be the roughest of the 32 episodes, but it's all good. Feel free to shame me in the chat. Feel free to shame me either in the YouTube comments or in Slack if you want. Just know that it may impact the future videos. Things to know about this video series. So the rosters, at least for the first couple of videos, the rosters are as of early August. I'm recording this the night of August 2nd. It is a beautiful night in Seattle. But what that means is, there are obviously going to be roster changes. Of course, we saw the Jamal Adams trade just a few days ago. Luckily, that is factored into these videos. But, there are going to be a lot of, or I'm assuming at least a couple more high-profile trades, high-profile acquisitions moving forward. So the rosters, at least for these first few videos, are as of early August. Just keep that in mind. It may not line up completely with what it ends up being in week one, but I can't do this all the week before, the week before the cycle starts, because I'm not superhuman. My Madden knowledge pales in comparison to the Dans, to the Bens, to the Alexes, to the Justins of the world. I don't know as much about how the game works, just like on a purely game level. So like, do awareness and play rec matter? What stats matter and what stats don't in terms of, offensive line production? Do any stats matter in terms of offensive line production? I don't know the answer to any of these questions, y'all. No one comes to my podcast for my, high-level Madden knowledge. I'm not a Madden guru by any stretch, but I'll try my best. I like to think I have a pretty good understanding of how the game works. Obviously, again, it falls far short of, the amount of knowledge that the Dans, the Austins, the Codys have, but it's all good. I will just do my best in that regard, and if I make any mistakes, again, Dan, if you hear me say anything that is just factually incorrect, let me know, slide into my DMs, and I'll try to fix that for future videos, at least after the first, 3 or 4 or so, because I'll probably have all of those recorded by the time you listen to this. Much like the rosters themselves, ratings, abilities, etc., are subject to change. That's one of the good things about this video series is, as I go on, not only will I get better and better at doing this, but the actual rosters and ratings will get more and more accurate, resemble more and more what the actual week 1 roster is going to look like. So that's good. Sorry, Clyde, kind of got screwed over in that regard. That's probably going to be the least accurate and, quite frankly, the worst of the 32 videos, but, it is what it is. It's also going to be the longest one because I'm describing all of this to you. This will be the last time I go into this whole things to know thing. So, you win some, you lose some from Cloud's perspective. As far as because I'm going to go into every unit and my projected starts, etc. I tried my best with these. I know what every team ran last year in real life, and I like to think I have a pretty good understanding of, which defensive rosters are more aligned with 4-3 versus 3-4 in terms of the personnel they have. I tried my best with that. Maybe, for example, I said the Cloud was going to run a 3-4 because of the personnel. Maybe he ends up running a 4-3. It would take a lot of tinkering, but he might end up doing it, in which case, that will all be off. So, just keep that in mind. Keep in mind that I am not perfect in that regard. I did this based on how I would personally construct the roster and which starting lineups I would personally use, but again, there's a reason y'all are winning Super Bowls and I'm not. Well, there are many reasons for that, but that's a separate issue. And, I've given all these qualifiers. Ultimately, I'm giving y'all hours of free content, so relax, please. Feel free to flame me, feel free to roast me if I say anything just beyond stupid, but at the same time, Steele, I don't want to hear it! Dude, every time I make something Young Alex! Shut up! Anyway, it's supposed to be a pretty chill video series. I'm not gonna flame individual users, at least not until their videos. The quarterback room for the Arizona Cardinals, we begin with the quarterback room, much like we will with every single one of these videos. And of course, the presumptive starter is the second-year man out of Oklahoma, Kyler Murray. Also, I'm doing this with no notes other than what you see on the screen, so you may hear me misspeak. You may hear me, have to think about things. I have to sort of collect my thoughts. It's something you're used to by now if you listen to the podcast. So just deal with that. Obviously, speed acceleration, the escape artist ability is what you come for primarily when you deploy Kyler Murray. One more thing I should mention. I know I keep stopping myself. I apologize for that. The 2 here, for example, the T15, the numbers that are in parentheses, those are how they rank in compared to the rest of the quarterbacks or the rest of the players in their position in the better league. So those 2s those 2s below the speed and acceleration, what that means is that Kyler Murray is the second fastest and the second quickest to accelerate quarterback in the better league. Obviously, both of those are behind Lamar Jackson, but not everyone can be Lamar Jackson, sadly. Of course, Kyler Murray, not just a scrambler necessarily. He does have decent accuracy stats. I don't know exactly what the thresholds are in terms of accuracy, or if there even are thresholds anymore. I know there used to be in, Madden 17, 18, etc. I think it was 85 across the board, but I'm not positive on that. But regardless, decent accuracy stats. The mid accuracy is something he's going to have to work on. That's not only is it, below most of the starters, just below some backups too. So Kyler Murray is going to figure that out, and that's probably where I would encourage Cloud to try to dev Kyler Murray is, in those medium accuracy stats. But regardless, still a very solid quarterback. And of course, as we move on to the right, his abilities are Escape Artist and Quick Draw. Escape Artist, a total cheat code in Madden 20. I don't expect it to be quite as much as one, based on the Madden 21 beta, but it's still going to be obviously a very, very important ability to have. And then Quick Draw, getting some of those passes off quick. That's going to be important for Kyler Murray and important for Cloud, even though it sounds like Usering's dead. I don't think Usering's completely dead, but that's a separate issue. That's something I'll get into in the podcast. But the Quick Draw is going to be helpful for Kyler Murray. The running game, I know this is a lot of numbers, and I know it can be kind of overwhelming. I apologize for that. I probably am not going to have 4 running backs in this table moving forward. Like for the running game, I'll probably have like 2 or 3 at most. But for this one, again, this is going to be the worst of the 32 videos because this is my first time doing this. But second off, I do think there are reasons why all 4 of these guys could potentially see the field. Of course, the presumptive starter is Kenyon Drake. Excuse me, I'm too used to saying Kyler Murray. And one other thing I should mention is the whole ranking them compared to the rest of the league. I only did that for the highest overall player in their unit. So when we get to defense, there are going to be some good players that you are not going to see ranked next to their counterparts. I only have so much time in the day. I try to have some semblance of a social life. I know it's quarantine, but I try my best. Kenyon Drake, a decent halfback. He does have decent spin and juke move stats, obviously top 20 in both of those, but I don't know how much that's going to matter because at least in Madden 20, the running game was very predicated on abilities. You get that juke box, you get that spin cycle, you get the human joystick. It's extremely helpful, and at some point, when you have those abilities, the actual attributes almost didn't matter. I expect them to matter a little bit more in Madden 21, but regardless, we'll see what happens there. Obviously, Kenyon Drake has no abilities, so we'll see how Cloud deals with that moving forward, especially in a division where I suspect that multiple other running backs will have abilities, but that's a separate issue. We'll get to that later. Just decent in all categories. He's just, I think he's just like an average starting running back. I know that's kind of boring to hear, but obviously it's no one's idea of a power back necessarily. But as far as speed backs go, not bad, not great, but not bad. That's not something I would look to immediately upgrade if I were Cloud, although he is going to have, obviously on that expiring contract, he is going to have to make that decision pretty quickly. Decent depth here, obviously, Chase Edmonds, Benjamin, DJ Foster, all of whom, well, other than DJ Foster, Edmonds and Benjamin are pretty young, and he does have a decent power back in Benjamin. I expect to see Benjamin get a lot of those touches in the red zone and potentially a lot of touchdowns because of that. If there is a better league, fantasy league, Benjamin's going to be one of those classic touchdown vultures who, Kenyon Drake gets a bunch of yards, but may not get as many touchdowns because he's the one taking all of the goal line carries. A decent, projected to have a decent running game as far as pure halfback skill goes. I don't necessarily see this as an immediate area for improvements, especially with, the depth he has with Edmonds and Benjamin, but I don't think Cloud's necessarily going to be jumping for joy either when he sees this. That's going to be an early decision. Does he want to re-sign Kenyon Drake or not? We'll have to see. Not spend too much time on one specific unit here because we still have plenty more to go, believe me on that. The wide receiving core, I forgot to include the positions of this one. Obviously, Max Williams is a tight end, and then you have Hopkins, Fitzgerald, Kirk, and Isabella, who I think will be the starting 4 wide receivers in that order. This, I think, is, probably even including Kyler Murray, just in terms of the combination of star power with Nuke and then depth with Kirk and Isabella. Both of them are 23 on those 4-year contracts. I think this is the best offensive unit that Cloud has. You have a combination of, as I said, star power. Look at all those abilities that DeAndre Hopkins has. He's going to get those ends popping. Shout out to Dan, Madden 18. He threw nothing but deep ends. I'm sure Cloud will throw plenty of those short and mid ends. Double Me was another one of those overpowered abilities from Madden 20. We'll see how that goes. And then red zone threat. Every time Cloud gets into that red zone, you can expect DeAndre Hopkins to get targeted early and often. As far as some of the impressive stats that DeAndre Hopkins has, again, I'm not doing this for every wide receiver because that's just too much, but second overall across all wide receivers in catching, tied for first in spec catch. Obviously, he has 99 catch in traffic, 99 spec catch. That is quite literally as good as it gets. The route running is on point. He's tied for third in short route running, and then alone by himself at third in mid and deep, and his release is 99. I mean, with 91 speed, 91 excel, that's definitely workable. I expect DeAndre Hopkins, especially the 5-year contract, good God, I expect DeAndre Hopkins to get a lot of targets from Kyler Murray. Frankly, Cloud's stupid if he doesn't. The Hopkins-Isabella receiving duo, I think, is going to be one that the NFC West has to fear here pretty early. As far as the depth goes, again, I mentioned Kirk, I mentioned Isabella. We saw Isabella just go off in Madden 20. He continues to have 95 speed, 93 excel. Obviously, not great in the route running categories or, frankly, the catching categories now that I look at it, but he'll be solid. He's a burner. He's someone that you can dev. Of course, again, only being 23 years old, he's someone that if Cloud chooses to dev him, that Isabella will definitely be a very solid, potentially dangerous receiver moving forward. And then Max Williams is the starting tight end. Below average, honestly, when you look at all that, when you look at all the stats. He's not really great in that category, but he is a cheap tight end, and he's not horrible necessarily. 78 speed, 86 excel. He can potentially be a matchup problem for some linebackers, at least. Not too many necessarily, but Max Williams, probably an average to below average tight end, but also not something that I would immediately look to upgrade. Obviously, I've been saying, multiple things or something I would not immediately look to upgrade. Here's why. The projected starting offensive line, I have it. You can see the positions, and I have the starting. I have my projected starter for every position. We'll see if this ends up reflecting what Cloud decides to put out there. This is what I would put out there if I were in Cloud's position. But again, Cloud, a better user than me, a more knowledgeable user than me. It may look different, but regardless, this is I can charitably say mediocre. This is honestly a below average offensive line in all capacities. Mason Cole may be the worst starting center in the league. I'd have to look at the Seahawks offensive line. I'd have to look at a couple others, but based on what I've seen so far, Mason Cole is right down there in terms of the absolute worst centers there are. And of course, the only decent workable options, I would say, in Justin Pugh and Marcus Gilbert, 30 and 32 respectively, and that Justin Pugh contract is looking more and more ugly as we move forward. So it's just not a very good offensive line in any capacity. Of course, DJ Humphries is the best run blocker of the 5, but the worst pass blocker. So I'm sure, good thing that Kyler Murray has escape artists, because that's something that the Cloud's probably going to have to look out for early and often. Only 69 pass blocking from DJ Humphries' perspective. That's just something he's going to have to look out for in terms of protecting the blind side. Shout out to Sandra Bullock. That was a god-awful movie. I don't even know if impact blocking matters, so I'm going to move forward on that. As far as finesse and power go, obviously they each have their specialties. Some of them are better in power, some of them are better in finesse. It looks like generally the left side of the offensive line with Humphries and Pugh are better, better power running blockers, again, you're going to hear me misspeak a lot, y'all, I apologize for that, but they're better power running, they're better at power run blocking than finesse run blocking, and they have good lead block to match, so I do expect, I think we'll see the majority of the carries, of Kenny Drake's carries, go to the left side of the offensive line, just based on that. The right side of the offensive line is just shambolic in most categories, man. That's something. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna hold off on that, because that's something I'll get into in this very next slide. This is something you will see for every single Better League team that I cover. It's going to be the top 3 positives and the top 3 negatives for both the offense and defense. We begin with the top 3 positives for Cloud's Arizona Cardinals offense. Obviously, a young, dangerous quarterback in Kyler Murray, still on that rookie scale for another 4 years. That's the majority of the cycle right there. And we'll see whether Cloud ends up re-signing him or not. I expect that he will, given how he's, Zach McDougald, etc. Zach McDougald, I should say, how he's been patient in terms of deving quarterbacks in the past. But regardless, Kyler Murray, a very young, very dangerous quarterback, again, on that rookie scale for the majority of the cycle. The second positive is the wide receiving core is very solid. Larry Fitzgerald is pretty unusable. I just included him. I included him in that table you saw because he has the second highest overall, and because the depth does really drop off after Isabella. So I do think we'll see Fitzgerald get at least some touches, but he had 83 speed, so he's not usable. But the star power of DeAndre Hopkins and the devable young talent in Isabella, that is a very solid place for Cloud to start off in terms of the wide receiving core. I think that's a position that he's not going to have to worry about for the majority of the cycle. And he has solid depth at halfback. I kind of stretched for this third positive, I'll be honest with you. Kenyon Drake is not anyone's idea of like a barn burner necessarily, but I listed those 4 running backs for a reason. If Drake does go down, if he decides to go a different direction, he does have decent depth at that position. He has again 4 running backs that I think could potentially produce for him. So solid depth in that position. As far as top 3 negatives go, the entire offensive line is trash. Again, I don't know if offensive line matters. I don't know if like those stats actually matter. I've heard debates both within the Better League and within the greater Madden community about that. I don't know the answer. I don't look into it as much as the rest of the league does. I like to focus my energy on content instead of actually getting good at the game. But the entire offensive line must be immediately replaced. It's generally old and it's generally bad. This is where kind of this is the other side of the coin in terms of the running game. There are no abilities in the halfback position, and we know, at least in Madden 20, how much abilities matter in terms of the ability to construct a solid running game. And there's not too much speed either. It's not like Kenyon Drake is a slowpoke necessarily, but they don't have anyone. Like, I think the highest speed in that running core, I should say, that halfback core, I guess, is 91, which isn't great. That's not something you can necessarily bounce to the outside consistently establish the edge, because that's just not going to get it done there. The more important thing is no abilities for sure. And then the nuke contract will be an albatross late cycle. I'm not going to go back because that's way too much clicking, but he is on a massive 5-year deal. And, given the fact that he's I believe 28 currently, if I remember correctly, obviously he's not going to regress too much because he is probably an X Factor if I had to guess. He's almost definitely an X Factor, so he's not going to regress too much, but those 4th and 5th years, especially given that all the contracts are backloaded, that's going to be pretty ugly. That's really going to hurt Cloud's ability to make moves in free agency and in the offseason, and especially if he, if he's devved Isabella like I think he would, I think he does, if he wants to replace Hopkins, that's just something he's going to have to figure out, is how to deal with that contract. Do you trade him and take the hit? Do you just roll with him and move forward? It's a tough situation he'll be in, but in the short term, for the immediate future, Hopkins is going to be one of the very best wide receivers in the league, so that's not something he has to immediately worry about. I have Cloud running a 3-4. Again, this is based on how I would construct the rosters, and the fact that, of course, the Cardinals ran a 3-4 in real life, so I'll bet you that's how they're structured in Madden as well. I would put Chandler Jones on the left end position and have him be a consistent pass rusher, because my lord is he dominant. You see those power moves, you see those finesse moves. He is top 5 in both categories. The man, despite the fact that he's 30, despite the fact that he, again, much like DeAndre Hopkins, that's going to be a pretty ugly contract in the later years of that contract, as the cycle goes forward, as the contract matures. That's going to be pretty ugly, but for now, again, you see all those abilities, you see the pursuit. He has relentless, he has edge threat elite, he has strip specialist, he has reach elite. That is going to be, like, if he's able to, if he's able to activate those abilities, moving forward, if he's able to, like, fulfill the requirements, that is going to be a highly dangerous pass rusher to contain. I'm not quite expecting Madden 20 Joey Bosa performance from him necessarily, but it's going to be up there for sure. Chandler Jones is going to be an absolute weapon again, I have him at the left end position. We'll see what Cloud ends up doing there. As far as the nose tackle and the right end go, Jordan Phillips isn't old, but he's aging for sure, and then Corey Phillips is outright old, and they're not particularly good. The clear strength here is in Chandler Jones, and of course, the rest of the defensive line should probably be replaced pretty soon. You look at the power, you look at the block shedding, you look at the power moves, the finesse moves. I believe that all 3 of those matter. Who knows? I certainly don't. But if all 3 of those matter, they're generally below average in all categories. So Chandler Jones is going to be a weapon, but I think opposing offensive lines could feel pretty safe in terms of just like double teaming Chandler Jones every play. And then if Peter and Phillips get through, then that's fine. That's probably never going to happen again. And of course, Corey Peters, being 32 years old, he does still have a 3-year contract, although it is relatively cheap, so that's something that Cloud can handle on his own. Chandler Jones, the clear highlight here. These are my projected starters in the linebacking core. Again, I have Cloud running a 3-4 here. Isaiah Simmons is the clear headliner here. Obviously he doesn't have an overall that like pops eyes necessarily, but keep in mind he is, of course, only a rookie, and he will be one of the very best devable. Again, I have him at linebacker. We'll see if that's even allowed because he's listed as strong safety. We'll see if, we'll see if the Abins even allow him to be played a linebacker. But if he is, then he is going to be one of the very best young linebackers in the league. Of course, 93 speed, 93 acceleration. I mean, Isaiah Simmons is going to be known as a matchup nightmare in real life, and I project him to be in the better league as well. He is first among middle linebackers in both of those categories, as well as first in change of direction. Now, change of direction is something I haven't even addressed until now. How much will that matter? I don't know. Will people be using at all? I don't know. If anyone's going to use her, again, with that league-leading change of direction, with that league-leading, speed and acceleration, it's going to be Cloud. But we'll see if Usering's dead or if it's just dying, I guess. And even if you don't use him, his man coverage, zone coverage, pretty solid as far as linebackers go. Of course, the play rec is something he's going to have to dev. That's something he's going to have to figure out. But it's all good. Isaiah Simmons is going to be an absolute weapon moving forward. And again, you have him on that rookie deal for 4 years. So that's very solid. A decent amount of at least acceleration and speed for Hassan Reddick. He's going to be a pretty solid left outside linebacker. I mean, that's not something that I think the Cloud really has to address moving forward. Of course, Jordan Hicks and Devin Kennard, they are going to regress pretty aggressively given the fact that, Kennard's going to hit 30 next offseason and Hicks is sure heading that way. So they're probably going to be 1-year starters at best. But regardless, I mean, this is a decent linebacking core here. Even when you take Isaiah Simmons out of it, not bad. Mid 70s overall from everyone. They all have their strengths and weaknesses, of course. Something the Cloud's going to have to scheme around, especially if it goes against really solid slot receivers. But it's something the Cloud can definitely work with, at least for season 1. And then, of course, Isaiah Simmons will be an absolute weapon. Here's my projected secondary. I for all of these, I'm going to have the first and second best cornerbacks, and then the starting free safety and strong safety. Of course, we'll see if this ends up being the strong safety, or we'll see if Cloud ends up putting Isaiah Simmons at strong safety. We'll see what's allowed there. But Patrick Peterson and Byron Murphy, you have, of course, the old veteran and Patrick Peterson, as well as a... is he a rookie? I don't know. Either rookie or second-year player there in Byron Murphy, but regardless, they're both looking, I should say, very, very solid. Patrick Peterson has all the intangibles, decent speed, decent acceleration. He'll be able to stay with, of course, most wide receivers, but it's all in the intangibles here. The play rec, very high. Man coverage and zone coverage, almost top 10 in zone coverage, top 10 in man coverage, and then high in press as well. I mean, this is a very impressive trio, quadrat. It's very impressive for consecutive ratings right there, I should say. And of course, his play record is very solid too. Unfortunately, no abilities. I think Patrick Peterson was a little bit disrespected in that regard. And I don't know what his dev is going to be for that matter, so I don't know how quickly he's going to regress. But regardless, at least year 1, a very solid cornerback there in Patrick Peterson. Of course, Byron Murphy, youth that you can develop. He's already 79 overall, and only 22 years old. I expect that to increase as the season moves forward. Budda Baker might actually be the best player on the... I'm not even talking long-term. He might just, right now, be the best player in this secondary. Looking at those abilities, mid-zone KO, that's something... I don't know exactly how the whole, setting zone depths with your individual players. I don't know exactly how that's going to work. That's something I plan on hopefully figuring out before the season starts. But the mid-zone KO refers to he has a higher chance of, deflecting balls, of drawing the ball loose in any route that's between 10 and 20 yards from the line of scrimmage. So with that in mind, you can expect Budda Baker to press up a little bit. Of course, he has very solid speed, very solid acceleration for free safety especially, and then 91 change of direction to match. We'll see. Dan claims that it's the year of the safety user. Maybe it's the year of the D-line user. We'll see how it goes, but regardless, Budda Baker is going to be a very solid option. We will not talk about Deontay Thompson. That is a clear area where Cloud's going to have to improve. Maybe he ends up putting Isaiah Simmons there. I don't know. But the thing is, if he does, then that linebacking core all of a sudden looks a lot worse, because I'm telling y'all, the drop-off from, let's see here. The drop-off from Jordan Hicks to, the third best middle linebacker is steep. I forget exactly who it is, but just trust me, y'all, it is steep. So that's something that's, I guess, a question that Cloud's going to have to answer pretty quickly, is does he take the L at the strong safety position or the second middle linebacker position? Or does he run 4-3 and just render all of this irrelevance? Top 3 positives and top 3 negatives, and I should say this is not the final slide here. I am going to get into I'm going to get into my game-by-game predictions. I'm going to get into, like, how I see Cloud as a user moving forward in terms of, like, his threat level to the rest of the league. But for now, the top 3 positives for his defense are Isaiah Simmons. I mean, that's the clear number 1 positive for him. He's going to be a glitch all cycle long. I mean, I have him projected at middle linebacker. It really doesn't matter where Cloud puts him. I mean, he's going to be an absolutely lethal player that Cloud's going to be able to develop and just dominate with all cycle long. That, in my opinion, like, he's probably, like, you know, you can argue Burrow, Tagovailoa. You can argue who the best like rookie quarterback is Madden wise. You know, I think there are decent arguments to be made both ways, decent cases you can make for both of them. But as far as defense goes, you know, with the possible exception of Chase Young, we'll see how that goes. I think Isaiah Simmons is going to be like probably the very best rookie from this last draft class moving forward. So that's something the Cloud, I don't know why I'm saying he should be grateful for. He chose the team, but that's something the Cloud should look to implement moving forward. Chandler Jones does project to be an elite pass rusher. Of course, this is, you know, season 1, season 2 at most, because he will regress pretty quickly. He is 30, but he is one of the very best pass rushers in the league. He's someone that the opposing offensive lines are going to have to account for. You know, consistently set those double teams, consistently set up those offensive line, you know, blocking adjustments, or else he will absolutely dominate you. There is promising young talent in the secondary. Of course, you know, I mentioned Budda Baker. Patrick Peterson is obviously, you know, I do not include him among this, but when you look at the second cornerback whose name I'm forgetting, I apologize, even though I just talked about him. But when you look at Budda Baker, there is a lot of secondary talent that he can dev moving forward. So I do think Cloud, you know, when you look at Isaiah Simmons, when you look at the secondary as a whole, I do think Cloud should be feeling pretty optimistic about this defense. You know, obviously there are some old pieces he's going to have to sort of reckon with, but he does at least have a young base moving forward for his defense. It's not going to fall off a cliff at any point in the better league cycle here. My top 3 negatives, again, other than Isaiah Simmons, the rest of the linebacking core is average. I say average. It's not terrible. We will absolutely address worse linebacking cores moving forward, but you know, there's not much to get excited over as well in the linebacking core, and a couple of their pieces are pretty old, so that's going to be immediate replacements from Cloud's perspective. You know, I mean, I didn't even mention the Patrick Peterson contract, I don't think, but he is on a 5-year contract. It's a $70 million contract, kind of like the DeAndre Hopkins contract, although I do think Hopkins will definitely age more gracefully than Peterson in terms of, you know, Madden ratings. That's something, again, that Cloud's going to figure out. I'm not going to, like, get back on my soapbox and wax poetic about how to handle large contracts, because I've shown in my better league career that I'm not the best at doing that, but that is something the Cloud's going to have to address. I mean, he's going to have to pay 34-year-old Patrick Peterson a lot of money, again, given that these contracts are backloaded, so that's a tough situation moving forward. But again, season 1, that doesn't necessarily matter, so if we're looking purely at this season, Cloud's fine. And then it is an old D-line with no deving opportunities. It's not a terrible D-line, but again, it's old. You can't dev these players, so I mentioned before, you know, that you do have Isaiah Simmons, you do have Budda Baker, you do have some other young devable pieces on this defense, but there are a lot of other positions where Cloud's going to have to replace them relatively quickly. That's just the reality of it. And, you know, no roster's perfect. That's the case for literally every roster in the better league. You know, there are going to be some positions that you're going to have to look to immediately replace, but for Cloud, I think there are probably more than most here on this in this defensive front. As far as cap space and expiring contracts go, his total cap space is very low. I believe this is bottom 5 in the better league. Obviously, we'll see, you know, how Madden fucks up the contracts, but for now, he has around $5.7 million in cap space. Luckily, and this is the same format you're going to see me use for this segment moving forward, I should say, I don't think he has any high priority expiring contracts that he has to re-sign, and the only medium priority one I think he has is Kenyon Drake. You know, that's something where if he's unable to, like, let's say, acquire a better halfback through free agency or trade, or if he, you know, doesn't have a great draft pick, which would be a good thing from Cloud's perspective, but if he doesn't have a great draft pick and the halfback class is pretty poor, you know, you can definitely re-sign Kenyon Drake to hopefully a relatively short-term deal in order to have him be your starter, at least for the next couple seasons. But I say medium priority because, you know, he's not someone you have to re-sign necessarily. You know, the Arizona Cardinals could either, you know, trade or cut or whatever Kenyon Drake heading into not this upcoming season, but the season after that, and be totally fine, in my opinion, again, with that halfback depth that I mentioned. So he's medium priority, and then a couple other low priority guys. These are not guys I would re-sign personally, but if Cloud chooses to, he can re-sign Marcus Gilbert, the right tackle, or he of 83 speed, Larry Fitzgerald, might be, as far as overall compared to production goes, will probably be the worst receiver in the better league in terms of like not living up to his overall. But that's what happens when you're a million years old. Shout out to Larry Fitzgerald, clear first ballot Hall of Famer. This is, and I apologize if it's a little pixely, I did the best I could with this. This is my complete season prediction in terms of the games I think Cloud will win and lose. The winning team is highlighted in their team color. So for example, here I have San Francisco winning, here I have Arizona winning, etc. It's the team that is highlighted in their team color that I project to win there. I'll just talk about a couple of like the key games here. I guess I should say like a couple of the key toss-up games. I have Cloud. I believe it's 3-3 in the division. I have him sweeping King. I have him losing both games against Ben. I think Ben's on a slightly different tier right now than Cloud, just in terms of pure user ability, and that 49ers roster is looking pretty nice. So I have him getting swept by Ben, although I wouldn't be surprised if, Cloud's able to steal a game from him. And then I have him splitting with Lucky. I think both in terms of roster and in terms of user skill, I think Lucky and Cloud are looking very similar right now. It's that old Spider-Man pointing meme, except not at all. I don't know why I said that. Again, this is the problem with going live here. And overall, overall, I have his record as 11-5. I had him, getting a couple nice wins, a couple losses. I'll go over the losses real quick. Obviously, I have him getting swept by San Francisco. I do have him losing to Ocho's New York Jets. I just think like Ocho's an incredible, especially regular season user. And even though that Jets roster is looking mighty pathetic right now, I still have Ocho, I think, sneaking that one off. Again, I mentioned that I have him losing once to Lucky, and then I do have him losing to Austin's New England Patriots. If Austin's as locked in as he says he will be, that is going to be a very dangerous user for any of us to reckon with. And then look at this, a nice little, well, other than this, he wins 4 out of 5 to end the season, so that's nice. Will 11-5 be enough to make the playoffs? I don't know. That's actually, I have the full projections. I'm not going to say whether that, wins the division or gets a wildcard spot or not, because I don't want to spoil things moving forward, but just know that I have Cloud going 11-5 and 3-3 in the division. Very solid division out there in the NFC West. We end with the humble host's threat level scale. This is something I came up with about 20 minutes ago. It is a 7-point scale that I think I could pretty much fit every user in the league under. You begin with the perennial Super Bowl contenders. I think it's going to be pretty clear who I put in that category, or in that tier, I should say. There's probably going to be only one user who I put in that tier, and you're an idiot if you're not guessing who it is. Number 2 is playoff contender with Super Bowl aspirations. Think of any of the users who have won or made multiple Super Bowls in the past. I'm not going to name names because, again, I don't want to spoil stuff. Number 3, consistent playoff contender, not necessarily looking to win the Super Bowl, but someone who can consistently make the playoffs in that regard. Number 4, the classic any given Sunday tier with playoff aspirations, meaning, users maybe like me who, they're good for a couple of upset wins and a couple of just atrocious losses every season. They are any given Sunday. Their form varies wildly based on the season, based on the game. I'm making myself depressed again. I apologize. But again, with playoff aspirations is the number 4. The number 5 are any given Sunday. They can get a couple upset wins, but they cannot piece it together enough to get a playoff berth. Number 6 is bad but frisky. How that distinguishes itself from any given Sunday is like any given Sunday. I'm talking about upset wins. Bad but frisky, I'm saying, you only beat them by like 14 or something. You only beat them by a couple touchdowns. They give you, maybe they play a good half against you. Maybe they have a couple nice reads where you're like, oh, like if you did that consistently, you might be a playoff contender. I'm not going to name any names, but chapter roll might fit in that. And then number 7 is just pure trash. I almost should have called this the tank category. They have no prayer. They have no shot. They have no hope as far as ever making the playoffs or really ever getting out of the bottom 10 of the league. I hope I don't end up being in that category. I don't think I will, but in Madden 21, I should say. But you never know. The league's getting awfully good. I have Cloud at a 2.5. I really struggled between going number 2 and number 3. He has shown flashes where he could potentially have Super Bowl aspirations. He's had, even, since Madden 17, Madden 18, he's had a couple of individual seasons where he has shown the potential to be a Super Bowl contender, or I should say, like, at least, have Super Bowl aspirations, but he doesn't do it consistently enough for me to give him a 2. And yet that potential still exists. He does still have that potential to get in the Super Bowl necessarily, but it's not consistent enough. So I gave him a 2.5. Cloud, I hope Cloud's happy with that. He's probably going to whine about it in the podcast chat, but that's something we'll have to deal with moving forward. I do think that Cloud, I wouldn't be blown away if Cloud won a Super Bowl in Madden 21. Especially if he devs Kyler Murray, especially if, let's say, Ben and Lucky have an off season. We've seen both of those things, off season, I should say, 2 words. We've seen both of those things happen before. If he's able to get a good playoff run in terms of, especially now with 7 teams being in the playoffs, if he's able to get a nice stretch of a couple winnable games in a row, I could very easily see him making the Super Bowl. But at the same time, I don't think anyone's going to have him among the Super Bowl favorites moving forward until he proves us otherwise. So again, for all those reasons, I've Cloud at 2.5. I hope he succeeds moving forward. I love Cloud. I hope he is able to, find that elusive Super Bowl title that's eluded him since Madden 17, but I don't think it's going to happen. We'll see. It's going to be a lot of we'll sees from me. Here's a photo of a cloud. Thank you all so much for watching this. Thank you for tuning in. I'd like to think it went pretty well. That's about what the next couple videos are going to look like in terms of structure. I will listen to your feedback if there's anything you want me to add, if there's anything you want me to get rid of, anything you want me to talk about that I haven't already, then I am absolutely all ears. Cloud, congratulations for being the first. This will be in alphabetical order by team city moving forward. So I believe the Atlanta Falcons are next. You will see that video tomorrow. Tomorrow being, the day after when you hear this, not the day after where it is for me. But regardless, thank you all for tuning in. I hope this is a successful video series moving forward, but don't worry, this will not replace the Seattle podcast. I have big plans for the Seattle podcast. We will cover things that you will not see in this video series. I am your humble host, Connor Rice. Peace.